Welcome back to the channel, Outriders. Thanks for all the support lately, guys. Today we have yet another build. We've been firing these things out. Yes, Pyro, puns intended. And this one is honestly my favorite build. I have a variant of it as well, so it's kind of like two builds in one. You got a nice little BOGO sale going on here. And I think this is the best way to play Pyro. And nobody's going to change my mind because they're giant eruption, volcanoes out of the ground. It's the most satisfying thing in the world. I love it. And I'm going to show you my Triple Eruption build. And it's the way that I play. I can honestly erase bosses with it, solo. It's really solid in squads or duos. It's a phenomenal build, and I think there's even a variant that reduces the eruptions, but can make you stronger as a team. And I will explain that after I go through the build that I'm currently using towards the end of the video. So here we go. Alright, so about the build, what I'm using for my class tree right here, I have the Pyromancer bottom, basically riding it straight out to Tempest, grabbing as much damage and increased skill damage as I can, Anomaly everywhere. I'm stopping here with Fire and Anomaly for additional Anomaly power. We have the damage against elites, a little bit of survivability inside of there as well, and realistically, Extinction is going to be huge when you're talking about handling beasts, because that's some of the hardest thing. Obviously, wave clear is amazing and easy for Pyro. Bosses are not so much unless you got thermal bombs, which I don't necessarily run, but could be great, and I'll explain a variation of this build that can really help you out. And then I go up here a little bit for the cooldown as well. Additional cooldown can't hurt because, again, the biggest hindrance to any sort of Anomaly build is obviously how often you can use those abilities. And that is basically what I'm running right there. As for the skills, I opt in for Heatwave, Eruption, and Overheat. My build circles and cycles entirely around Eruption. A lot of other people in the other variant works around Heat Wave and Thermal Bomb, with the Eruption is kind of like a detonator that ends up killing bosses, and I'll explain that variant a little bit later. But I really like this combination, and I want to explain why. This is definitely very fun and the most enjoyable way to do it, because I think Eruption's the most satisfying option in the game to use, and I consider it the most fun. Now, what I'm using is a traditional kind of standard. I know a lot of people like to use different variants, you know, put on winds and stuff like that on their pistols and a lot of other things, whatever you're comfortable with. But Fortress is a huge attribute that you should have on most of your primary weapons when you're doing Anomaly builds, because that 43% damage bonus affects your skills. And as long as you're keeping that up, something like Shadow Comment really does great. And as you can see, I have the exact same thing on my Funeral Pyre, and I kind of like stagger those. Do you have to? No. But if you want the damage and faster clears, it's there for you to use. Now, I'm rocking the 3-piece Acari set. Now, as I've mentioned before in the Acari review, these things are universally amazing because every enemy damaged by Heatwave grants 50% Anomaly power for 10 seconds. That's a massive boost. That's every enemy damage, and I think that scales up to 10 times. So that is huge. The more heat waves you're sending out, the more damage you're sending out, and ultimately, you're going to buff your other abilities tremendously. So this is something that almost every build is synergizing around right now. The best 3 pieces you can have are the helmet, the chest piece, and the body. And as for the mods that I put on this, I really like Fire Tsunami. It's not a must-have, but it really makes things easier. You're going to hit more targets and therefore get that additional 50% here and there, maybe even, you know, 100. That width really matters. That thickness is great. And I think it's a must-have, but it is technically something you could sacrifice if you were more accurate or maybe wanted an additional heat wave altogether. I think it's a great one. I put on Emergency Stance as it's currently bugged. It's very good. Another defensive option could be very useful for you, but honestly, you may not even need it because of the burst that this has. So depending on how well you play your Pyro, you won't really honestly not even need any sort of defensive perks, and you can get away with this. You got 3 sets of skill life leech, cooldown, and Anomaly power on the Acari set, and they do quite nice together. If I didn't use Emergency Stance, right now I would probably put on Burnt Out, which would add up 25% more damage for 8 seconds on the heat waves. On the chest piece, I'm using Etna, which is a tier 3 mod that comes off of the Lava Gloves. It's a legendary set of gloves that when you break it down and dismantle them, you are granted a 3rd possible eruption skill. And this is huge for this build. It's pretty much a must-have. Again, the variant can work with only 2, and I'll explain that in a minute. Tidal Wave is something that I think is great. Obviously, the more heat wave, the more stacks, the additional 50%, so on and so forth. So the pants, Anomaly Echo comes default on these, and these are just great, honestly. You're going to keep that permanently with uptime with how much you're spamming your build, so that's just naturally 11,000 extra Anomaly power. And Pompeii is one that a lot of you should be familiar with. It's only a tier 1 mod. It gives you a 2nd eruption, or in this case, a 3rd eruption, and that's what I build around. For the gloves, I'm looking for Anomaly power, cooldown reduction, and status power. Same thing with the boots, but realistically, if you want more skills, life leech instead of status power, you can go that way. But because the other 3 pieces have it, I think it's well-rounded if you aim for status power. I got debris on this. Again, this is an eruption build. It throws damaging debris at enemies, dealing a lot of additional damage. So if you put this like right in the middle, one eruption right in the middle, that debris is going to kill all the surrounding enemies, and it does really well. Bullet kindling, from what I hear, is actually currently bugged, but if it isn't, it's great. If it's going to get fixed, it's going to be great, and I have a really good pair of gloves that I bought from the vendor, surprisingly. These didn't drop. So remember to check your vendor every half an hour, guys. These rolls right here, this one dropped from the vendor. It's amazing. So last up, I have Phoenix Force. Now, this is one you don't see a lot. This is something that I work with. I like the overheat. This is going to allow me to have burst on elites. So as long as I stack burn on enemies, whether or not it's my gun, like if I want to use an Inferno Seed with the Moloch perk, or if I want to go ahead and just hit them with the wave, this allows me interesting combinations and additional burst, because, you know, if I hit just 3 enemies with 1 wave, that's 20,000 more anomaly power if I detonate my overheat, which is on a pretty generous cooldown. So this is one of the best DPS buffs you can have in the game just from proccing a random skill, and it's honestly a slept-on option, and I think it's amazing. Last up is Giga Blast. This is probably the most important mod for an eruption build. It increases the skill's radius, but I mean, the girth on this thing is huge. It really thickens it up. It can clear out most tight lanes inside. I'm not immature, you're immature. Inside of a run, and it really just helps the clear control. So the only 2 mods that I recommend for the Triple Eruption build that I think are must-haves are Debris and Giga Blast. They just help with clear. There are other ones like Magma Coat that can do really well, might even be better than Debris ultimately. You might want to experiment and test out which one you like, but Magma Coat's a really great option as well. So I have some room for improvement and flexibility in this build, and I'm going to jump into some gameplay, and when I talk about the gameplay, I'm going to explain what the other variant is and what I've been taught to do that people consider to be significantly better, maybe not so much in solos, but definitely in squads. Now, as I said, Phoenix Force is a huge part of my build. It's not something I see a lot of people use with this combination with Acari, and you have to consume statuses. So any sort of combination with this can work, like laying down a Heatwave, consuming it for the additional, 20, 30, 40,000 anomaly power, hitting with another Heatwave so that the consumption in the boost of 50% is even higher because your anomaly power is higher at the time, and then finishing off with the Triple Eruption, or even leading with like a Moloch or an Inferno Seed by popping that perk, consuming it with overheat, doubling the heat wave, and then tripling the eruption. There's a lot of combinations, but realistically, when you're ready to burst a boss, you want to at least do a double heat wave, then overheat, and then the triple eruption. That's what I do. It's just simple, it's easy, it melts entire bosses. Can you get more damage depending on how you want to combo them? Yes. Is it more work? Yes. Am I going to do it? No, I'm lazy. So that is what I advise, the combination for me. I repeat one more time. Heat wave, get those stacks up. Then you pop the overheat so you get additional anomaly power, and then it makes your eruption go big boy. 3 times in a row. That's how you melt a boss. Everything else, it's the same concept. You want to stack the heat waves, hit as many targets as you can, and then put the eruptions wherever you want. Again, ideally in the middle of targets, because that debris and everything is going to kill everything surrounding it, and the radius on it is massive. So I absolutely love it for entire room clears. Now, for the variant, and I've been told that this is one of the best options for squad play. I really like this way, and I don't think I'm going to change it because I feel like I contribute at least my part, if not more, as a single player. But this build is amazing on its own. The variant, however, works more along a 3-2-2 guide or a 3-2-1 guide, where you go 3 heat waves to stack up the largest amount as you can. A lot of people like to use burnout with that as well, which gives you the additional 25%, which stacks for 8 seconds, which is 75% with 3 heat waves. Then they use Thermal Bomb, 2 of them, accompanied with Branded, which does 80% of a debuff to the enemy. So you get the buffs from Heatwave, you get the debuffs from Thermal Bomb on a single target, or I guess 2 targets technically, you can split it. And then you use Eruption or 2 Eruptions if you have them equipped to really burst them down. So you've done a buff, a debuff, and then an erase with that combination. And that's what a lot of people recommend. It's a lot of work. It's a little bit harder to put together, but that's what a lot of people do. So, and that's what I would advise. If you are going for the variant, 3 heat waves, 2 thermal bombs with Branded, which is a tier 3 mod, and then either go 1 eruption and, some other stronger mod if you need, or even an eruption and Giga Blast so that the radius is huge. Or again, you can just opt in for like an additional Pompeii or something and have 2 eruptions that may help you do the clear. Again, they're great. They're a little tinier, but it's really going to help you take those stacks and that anomaly power that you buff up from the Acari, the Heatwave, the Burnout, and the debuff from the Thermal Bomb. So that is how people use it. I hope this has been some sort of value for you. It's not easy to put together, but I widely consider this to be the best overall build in the game for Pyro. I don't see anything getting better than this. I know there's a speedrun variant, but that's for solo only. That's for unique maps. It's not going to be something acceptable for always and always to play. So that is what it is, guys. Subscribe if you're new here so you don't miss any future videos. And leave a like because it really helps out tremendously. I'm going to give a big thanks to the community that helped me put this build together. I changed a few things and tweaked things for my liking, but it's ultimately just a lot of fun to play. And honestly, having 3 volcanoes at your disposal, who needs puppies, right? I got these lava spewy boys. That's good enough for me.